some stories at work. My boss I really liked him, but I'd play a lot of tricks on him. One day he was out of his office, and I looked up at the office of the plant manager, and who nobody knew and he talked with, and I found his phone number, and I wrote on a paper, I said, Mike, when you come in, call Jim. And I wrote down the number, and he called it, and the guy's secretary answered the phone and says, Mr. Morgan's office, who was the guy that was the plant manager. And my boss, he just hung up. He knew he'd been had, and just done a lot of things on him. I put, we always had to have safety meetings, and I'd call him, and or he'd had to lead the safety meetings. And one time they had some pictures on the wall of different people that worked in that area, and his picture was on there, but he's standing there holding his safety glasses in his hand. So there's about 8 or 10 maintenance people that worked where I did, and I called them all over there by this picture, and I got my boss down there, and I says, what's wrong with this picture? And everybody's looking at it. My boss is looking. I says, he's had his picture taken without his glasses on. I says, everybody in here is supposed to have their safety glasses on while they're in the plant. And that kind of...
Did they ever play any jokes on you and get you?
Sometimes, but you just learn to get used to it. One time they had a lot of granulated plastic that they made parts out of in a machine, and we got this guy's toolbox unlocked and filled it all full of, or we broke into the back of it and filled it full of granulated plastic. We used to get guys' screwdrivers. You put them through a coil with electricity on them, and it magnetizes them. It'll also demagnetize them if you know how to do it, but we magnetized their screwdrivers and all their other tools we could, so whenever they laid them down there, they always stuck to stuff, or everything stuck to them that was metal. Used to do a lot of that kind of stuff. I got called in one Sunday on a machine they had one group working, and I wasn't scheduled to work Sunday, but they was running one machine, and they had an electrical problem, so they got a guy down there to fix it, but he didn't know how to program it. So they called me about 10 o'clock in the morning. I was getting ready to go to church, and they called me and they says, Bob, can you come in? We need you. I says, what happened? They told me what happened. I said, did you program it right? They says, yeah, we did, but it just doesn't work. I says, okay, but since it's 10 now, it'll be almost 11 before I get there. And I says, what are you going to pay me for? They said, well, you come in, and we'll pay you from 6 o'clock in the morning until 3:30 or whatever it was. And I said, okay. So I went in there, changed my clothes, walked up to the machine, and put my key in it, and programmed 2 numbers, turned the key back off to go, and the machine started running. And it probably took me 2 to 5 seconds to do the job, and they paid me 16 hours pay at double time to do it.
Why didn't they figure that out?
Because the electrician that was working on it never worked on it before, and he didn't know what had to be done. And so that was a case where they had all their eggs in one basket, and I happened to be the basket. We had one time we had a big snowstorm, and it was it snowed all day. It snowed all one day, and then I went to work on midnights, and it snowed all evening and all midnights. So they closed the plant up the next day, But my boss called me and says, Bob, we'd like to have you stay 2 hours overtime in the morning to shut everything down in the paint plant, everything electrical, ovens, and everything had to be shut down. So I says, oh, okay. And that 2 hours overtime almost kept me from getting home because we had like 28 inches of snow. And it kind of, one time in this paint plant, I had to, at 5 o'clock in the morning, I had to start the ovens. And I had to start the ovens, and they put, and I had to hit 2 buttons to start it. Well, the first button I hit, and then I had only been in there about a week or 2 on my own running it. So anyway, I started them ovens, or I hit the button, and the lights all came on. I thought, well, that was okay. And the day shift electrician came in, and he was supposed to look at the charts to see if it's coming up to heat. He just came in, he looked, but he didn't do anything. Well, I went home at 6:30, and 7 o'clock they started getting all wet hoods and fenders out of the oven. So they hadn't baked or nothing. So that put final assembly down, which was probably at that time about maybe 1,000 people for about an hour, and it was on time and a half, and it's all getting paid for it. But my general foreman came down that night and asked me what happened, and I told him. And he didn't give me a reprimand or anything, but I wrote in a suggestion to change that button so that the lights wouldn't come on until after everything was on, started. And they gave me a $500 reward, suggestion award for doing it. I worked with a plumber, the meanest, orneriest man I ever worked with. So we never got along very good, but he worked there 40 years, and his wife brought him to work every night on midnights, took him home, and picked him up every morning. And she'd done that all. So anyway, the last year he worked, he said he wasn't, or she said, if you don't know enough to quit, I'm not gonna take you to work anymore. 'Cause he had a lot of money. And so first day he drove in on work all alone. He locked his car and went in. The plant protection got a hold of him. Plant protection got a hold of him later and said his car was still running in the parking lot. He'd locked it and his car was still running. And and then one time the unions handed out propaganda, and I seen him. He walked in ahead of me at the work, and I seen him, and I seen him take one of them papers and stuck it in his pocket. So I says, or I didn't think any more about it. And then that night, after things quieted down, I was sitting at my desk and I was reading this paper. And he says, when you get done, I'm going to read it. And I said, didn't you get one? And he says, oh, no, I didn't get me one. Well, it seemed to it. So anyway, I read it. It didn't amount to much. And I gave it to him. He read it. Later on, I went back where he hung his coat. I took the paper I seen him stick in there out and threw it away. And the next night we come in, he says, you know that paper I had in my pocket? And I says, yeah. Or he says, you know that paper you was reading last night? I says, yeah. He says, somebody stole that out of my pocket. I says, well, you told me you didn't get one. Oh, I got one. And this went on. I used to make popcorn after the afternoon shift went home. I'd make popcorn. I had, I made it right from the popper and the seeds and oil and everything, and it didn't cost much, but I'd make a popper full, and I tell you, I had to make 2 poppers full to get any, because the first handful or the first popper, he ate it just like he'd never had popcorn.
Did he ever quit?
Yeah, finally, yeah.
But his wife wouldn't take him anymore because she
No.
wanted him to quit.
Right. And anyway, like I said, I had to make a lot of popcorn because other people came in and ate it too. But he never offered to give me anything. I mean, he had all kinds, and I didn't care because it didn't cost anything, but I went on sick leave. I sprained my ankle and I was off work for 5 weeks. And another electrician come down here and took my place, and he made popcorn. Well, the first night he made this popcorn, he says, old Conky, he went to grab some popcorn out, and the electrician said, wait a minute. He says, I'm not Bob. He says, you can have all the popcorn you want for 25 cents a night. And he would not eat anymore until I came back to work. And then
Did you ever charge him 25 cents?
No. And then I had a couple probes I made with electrical cord on it. You take these packages, Smoky Links, you know what they are, and I'd stick one of them probes on each end of that package and plug it in. And in 45 minutes or seconds, they were sizzling hot. And he would eat them, but he never did offer to buy in, pay anything. But then when he retired, and they gave him a big party because he had 46 years seniority in there, and they went and gave him an electric trolling motor for his boat.
Wow.
And he was upset because they didn't buy him the battery that went with it. And so that had a lot of, I just made life miserable for him because any time he couldn't see me, I was sleeping. That's what he thought. And I did sleep a lot because my foremen knew I was. They knew if I had my work done and I was probably going to take a nap, and they wouldn't. And on pay night, my foreman was about 3 or 4 blocks away, and the only time I'd see him maybe was on pay nights, unless we had a major breakdown or something. And he would I said, someday I might be out working and you come pay me. I said, just put my check in the drawer of my desk and I'll pick it up when I come in. He never handed it to me again. But this guy, he lived only about 3 years after he retired after 46 years. But he was ornery with everybody. And I got along with him, but I made life miserable for him.
What was your rule of thumb about retiring? You said something about how many years you worked and how many years you retired?
I had 28 and a half years, and they gave me 30 years credit for 30 years. And I had, for a year and a half, I got 85% of my pay, and then when I got 30, what would have been 30 years, then I had to go on my pension after I had 30 years in, and then when I got on Social Security, they cut my pension right in half, and my Social Security more than made up for what they took out. But when I turned 65, they cut my pension right in half.
Is that the way it is? Was that the rules?
It is, yeah.
But you worked for 28 years and you wanted to be retired for how many years?
Oh, I would like to be retired for every year I worked.
And so
at
how many?
General Motors.
And how many years? Where are we in that? How long you been retired now?
I've been retired for 25 years, so I'm getting close.
We're gonna make it.
I got poked off in 440 volts 3 times.
What?
The first one hurt.
Wait, what happened?
I got shocked with 440 volts one time, or 3 times. The first one hurt. The next 2 were kind of just a tingle, but they could have been worse.
How'd that happen?
Stupidity on my part.
Operator error.
Probably 90% of accidents are self-inflicted. Probably 95% is self-inflicted. You know, something you did wrong.
And were you new at the job, or experienced, or tired, or what happened?
Well, I think after a while you get careless, and that was part of it. One time a guy got caught in a machine, and this was kind of a press. It opened up and then came out like this, and this guy was back in there because he was having a problem. He got back in there and he thought he had the machine on manual, and he didn't. He had it on automatic. And when they told him he told the operator to move the machine. Well, when they did, it was on automatic, so that thing came in and a bolt went right through here, and he's hanging there. And I thought he was dead. They come and run in there, and I had a little box I could plug into the computer on the machine and make the machine pretty much do what I wanted it to do. But my problem was I didn't know what happened. I thought maybe the machine broke. So I was hesitant, but anyway, I pushed a button on my box, made it get off of him, and he took him out. And I'd seen him then. I thought he was dead. And this was in November, and he was out of work till the 1st of April. And the next day I went in. Of course, when something like that happens at General Motors, they shut the machine right down. They go through that and want to know exactly whose fault it was, what happened to it. And I went in the next day. Each plant in the General Motors has its own safety man. And then, like in Lansing where I worked, there was 3 plants. They had 3 safety men, but then they had one that was over them 3. And then out of General Motors in Detroit, they had one that was over all the plants. And I go into work the next day, and this guy's there, and he said, "I need to talk to you." And the first thing General Motors usually does on a deal like that, like they would give me a reprimand, because that's their way of covering themselves. If something had happened that would have finally killed him, they wanted to know. And so they give me a reprimand, but my boss, my general foreman, said, "I'm not giving him one." He said, "That guy'd be dead now, but if he hadn't got him out of there, he wouldn't give me one." And anyway, the head safety man out of General Motors says, "What did you do?" And I told him what I did, and he says, "That's the first time in General Motors history that we ever electrically moved a machine to get a guy out of it. Usually they would get jacks to jack the machine away from him and then get him out."
Was that the award you got?
And I got a gold watch for life-saving award, yeah.
And was that guy at the ceremony that you got your gold watch? The man
Yeah.
you saved, he was there?
Yeah, him, and there was 2 other guys two guys got back in there with him to get him when he came out, because he was gonna fall right to the
Yeah.
ground.
Yeah.
So they got him, and I got several suggestions awards, especially in the last area I worked in. I worked in it 13 years, and I was working with a company man to install all that machinery, and so I learned a lot of it from him. But he says, but anyway, my boss told me, he says, "Are you writing out suggestions?" Because of the duty department there. "No," I said, I'm fixing everything so that when I have to run it myself or take care of it, I want it the way I want it. He says, "You don't write out suggestions." He says, "I'm going to give you a reprimand." So the first suggestion I wrote out, they gave me $10,000 for. And then I wrote out another suggestion and got 7,500. I think 7,500 out of it. Plus I got a bunch of minor ones that were anywhere from $500 to $1,000. I got several of them. One time we was just married, and I was working with painters. I wasn't working for General Motors. I was working for painters they paint the inside of plants. And I was going through, the steel work is up above, holding the building up, Well, we had to pull these, they call them picks, but they were about 30 foot long, and the painters that spray painted would walk on these. It was only about that wide, but they'd walk on them. And my job was to keep pulling them ahead of them. When they get done, pull it. Well, I was going through the steel work one day, and I had a rope. I had bib overalls on, and I had a rope tied to it. And I was just pulling the rope with me. but I didn't have to hang on to it with my hands because I was hanging on to the steel. And all of a sudden I could feel that rope get tight. It just kept getting tighter, and I looked, and it had fell down to the floor and got on a machine that was turning like this, and it was wrapping it around there. So I thought, well, these are old pants. And I hung on as long as, I hung on until it finally ripped the pant, strap on the pants. So that was another thing. It was my fault, but, and then one other time, I was pulling one of them, and the guy was supposed to be on the other end to hang on to it so the back end wouldn't drop down to the floor. And I always, when I did it, they had the cross pieces in the steel work, and I'd always make sure one of them was in front of me here, and my arms was like this. And he had got a hold of it and pulled it out, and those thing, they probably, I don't know, it was about 30 foot long, so they weighed a lot just going down, and or I'd have got it pulled out of the steel end, but it was fortunate that I always kept metal between me so I couldn't pull me through it. That's about all I can think of for the work part. One time I was working, I didn't write that, they had these motor blocks, and it was just a block. It didn't have the engine parts in it like pistons and the cranks, and it was just the blocks. They were milling them. And a machine, I figured had a bad solenoid in it. So I went and got the solenoid, and I went back there, and to get back where that part was at, I had to change. There was a rack of these, they put about 6 or 8 of these motor blocks on a pallet, and they'd stick another pallet on top of it, put more on, and thought, well, I'll just climb over them and get the job done. And I always carried a book in my back pocket, like a paperback book. And anyway, I'm climbing over this stack of blocks, and I make one step, and one of them blocks goes out from underneath me to the floor. And the only thing I think of, I want that thing to hit the floor before I do, because I didn't want it falling on me. So I pushed it, and it went down, and then I fell. And I fell right, I cut my side and my arm. And,
How far was the fall?
probably only about 3-4 foot.
Okay.
But I fell on it, got all scraped up and everything. And so I went ahead and finished the job, got that good machine going, and I went to first aid. And they patched me all up, and my boss, he said, I could give you a reprimand. He could have, just for carelessness, but he didn't. And he says, anyway, I've got my job done, I got all cleaned up, I didn't have nothing going on. I went back and sat down, and I pulled that book out and started reading it. And I opened it up, and it's cut through the first 64 pages. It's got a cut through it. So there was something sharp that I hit on with my fanny. It would have been disastrous. And I told my boss, I said, see, it's a good thing to read. And,
Wow.
And had a lot of that kind of stuff going on. That's about all the work stories I can think of right now.
You still got all your fingers and everything.
Still got my fingers. I learned it early. One time I was helping. We had this machine had big solenoids on it. Solenoids are what makes the machine shift back and forth and do what you want it to do. And I went and I decided this was bad. The solenoid was bad. So my job was to unwire it, and the machine repairman was supposed to take it off, put on a new one, and then I had to rewire it. And so I locked the machine all out. There was nothing running, and like it had 75 horse motor on the pump on there. So I locked it all out. Got the repairman. He brought his tools down. He went to order a new one down, and while he's gone, I get my job done unwiring it, and I thought, well, I might as well help him. And I got out a big Allen wrench and one of his tools, and the bolts on it was big as my thumb, and there was 4 of them, and I'm breaking them loose. We had to take them off and slide the other one on, bolt it back on. And about the 3rd one I broke loose, oil come out of there like you wouldn't believe, just under pressure because it was trapped in there. Now that was a accident. It wasn't my fault. But we didn't know it had trap pressure in there. But anyway, it come out of there, and it was hot oil. It wasn't hot enough to burn you, but it was really warm. And that shot oil all over me from my head to my toes, in my glasses, all over. I mean, my clothes, I had to go up, take a shower, and change clothes. And my boss seen me, and he says, are you okay? He was sitting on a scooter. He says, are you okay? And I says, yeah. And when he found out I was okay, I thought he would fall off his scooter laughing. That was my only oil bath in 28 and a half years is then. And I mean,
Who washed those clothes?
that was company, it was
There,
company
they do.
clothes. But your glasses get motor oil on, think how hard it is to clean them. You get,
But prescription glasses or the goggles?
no, they were prescription glasses, but they were safety glass. They wouldn't break.
What about the motor that you kept changing and took the guy a week to put the wrong one in twice?
Yeah, I remember that.
Might not have been a motor.
Something you kept fixing, and it was the
Yeah,
and you replaced the same thing.
it was bad and the company man came in and he worked a week on it.
Yeah.
Oh,
And you replaced the
yeah,
same.
yeah, we had a machine that broke down, and I thought I knew what was wrong with it, and I ordered down a power supply for it, and they were soldered in. So I had all the other machines I had to take care of while I'm getting this in my spare time, and I got the old one out and I set it down, and I went and done a bunch of other jobs, and I came back and I picked up the one I had taken out, stuck it in there, soldered it all up, the machine wouldn't run. This was on a Monday. Tuesday, a company man come in, and I'd worked with him a lot, and we worked on that thing all day Tuesday, all day Wednesday, all day Thursday. Couldn't get the machine going. And on Friday, he came in and he said, Bob, let's go up and have a cup of coffee. So we go up to the cafeteria and we get some coffee, and he says, I think we need to change that power supply again. I says, okay. So I ordered down another power supply, because I had sent the one back thinking it was bad, and it was a good one. And I ordered one down, he came down, and we put that in, and the machine started running. And then I was pretty sure what I had done wrong. And the company man, he had to account for his pay, so he just wrote down we had 2 bad power supplies. And that covered us both. I worked 28 and a half years and never had a reprimand. I got one, and then I didn't fight it. I just told the guy, I said, I don't care. That's the only one I've ever had. At that time, it was 17 years. I said, I don't care if you take it off my record or not. But 2 days later, the foreman that gave it to me said, I took that off your records.
What happens if you get too many reprimands? Did they fire you?
Well, it's pretty hard to fire anybody working for the union, which I didn't always agree with. But I didn't like a union because the electrician that didn't care wouldn't do nothing, he made as much money per hour as I did, and I did care. And so, things like that I didn't like. One time,
Go ahead.